Tuesday, May 30th, and I am in South Deerfield, Massachusetts, the home of the Yankee Candle Village flagship store. So why am I not there? Well, it's still very early in the morning and they just simply have not opened yet. So I'm making use out of the time. I'm in my hotel room and I thought I would sit down to review Yankee Candle's brand new 2017 fall collection. What I have in front of me are 5 candles that will be released for 2017. And I just want to state, just to remind you folks, I have not smelled these before. I mean, I smelled them all right now collectively, but I have not opened these up and smelled them individually. So let's jump right into it. First candle on the list is going to be Warm Luxe Cashmere. What we see on the label, neatly folded cashmere knit sweaters. I think we all have expectations when smelling a candle like this. That was not what I was expecting. Okay, well, it's very soft and powdery, but I think that goes without saying. I think we come to expect that from a candle of this theme. But it's not so much like a talcum powder powderiness. I'm gonna go with baking soda. Yeah, like that saltier baking soda smell that we come across in laundry rooms. There is a creamy and a sweet side too. So the sweetness is taking that powdery and turning it into like candy. We could say Necco wafers, but what is really coming to mind, and I don't even know what they're called, but you know what I mean, the little Valentine's Day charms with the little written phrases. Will you be mine? Will you? Text me? Was that a flip phone? I don't know what that was. There's a creamy side to this too. Creamy like cocoa butter. And like dairy creaminess. French vanilla. And check this out, cream soda. Yeah. And I don't think anyone has ever walked into a laundry room without experiencing the smell of lavender. And the same is true right here. Say lavender, violet, and white blossoms. So a little bit of this muskiness. I am going to guess bergamot, and whether it's in here or not, I'm picking up on lime. It has this tanginess that we find in a clementine. Very interesting. So with that creaminess and that fruitiness, totally getting this orange creamsicle thing happening. And when I said this is not what I expected, you know, this is not necessarily like a laundry room to me. This is reminding me more of like barber shop. Very masculine. So don't think of this scent as a fresh laundered sweater as much as, you know, this smelling like someone who was wearing it and left it behind. You know, this smells like someone's aftershave. This smells like someone's cologne. Not necessarily like a fresh laundry. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that direction. Since this is cologne aftershave driven, I should mention that there are some other things very earthy and woody. And that woodiness and that muskiness that we talked about before is really starting to paint a portrait for me of the study, the library, the lounge, warped, aged wooden floorboards, wooden furniture, with a little bit of smoke taint from cigars or pipe smoke. I think a lot of people are going to like this one a lot. All right, let's continue. So next on the list, this is one I have been eagerly awaiting. Sugared Pumpkin Swirl. Oh yeah. I just want to bring to your attention the elegance to this label. The color of the wax, grayish color in contrast with that metallic chrome banner that frames the photograph of that blinged out white pumpkin really does make this look like a luxury candle. Sugared Pumpkin Swirl. I can't wait a moment longer. Here we go. A colossal blast of pumpkin spice, cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, allspice in such a massive way. But really, it's the cinnamon that's the major player here. And it's this super spicy fireball candy, red hot tamale, Saigon cinnamon spiciness. Woo! Just doing this, right? Trying to let this candle breathe. I can feel it in my eyeballs. And here's a little trick. I've mentioned this before. If you have a candle that is super high intensity, like this candle, in fact, go grab a candle right now if you have one. Trust me, it'll be worth it. Put the candle up to your nose, just like this. And don't breathe in through your nose. Don't breathe in through your nostrils. Don't do it. Breathe in through your mouth. You smell it. That's a great little tool, a tip, to take a really powerful smell, dial it down, and really just smell it in a much more mild way. You can do the same thing with wine too. So now that this candle's had a chance to open up a little bit, and just having me sit here a little bit of a distance away from it, I'm starting to pick up on a massive sweetness. It was so covered up by the spice when I first opened up the jar. Icing or glaze. In fact, there's a little bit of this Cinnabon thing happening here. Sun-dried raisins. So you see where I'm going with this. You have this baking spice, you have this glaze, you have this raisin, definitely Cinnabon. But I want to say something else. TJ Cinnamons. Does anybody remember TJ Cinnamons? Anybody? It seems like every time I bring it up, people look at me like I'm crazy. But when I was a kid, there would be TJ Cinnamons in shopping malls, and there'd be lines out the door. They were sticky buns. They had like a caramel coating with pecans. I'm saying that because I'm picking up on nuttiness. Very similar to a raw pecan nuttiness. I mentioned the classic pumpkin spices in here, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other exotic spices like chai spice, but it's almost impossible for me to tell because of the strength of that cinnamon. But something I was gonna leave out, but it just keeps coming to my mind, so I'm gonna put it in just for the record, is coffee bean. And I think that's going back to the nuttiness that I was talking about with that pecan. Medium roasted coffee bean. A little bit of this Maillard reaction, that enzymatic browning of the coffee bean, which really truly does make this smell like a pastry. So sugared pumpkin swirl. Let me tell you right now, if you are one of those pumpkin spice fanatics, if you are all about pumpkin all year round, yes, I think you're going to absolutely adore this. Very cool. Let us move on. So on the list next is sweet fig and pomegranate. On the label, it's very small. We have a bowl, perhaps with pomegranate seeds and maybe pomegranate juice or syrup of some sort, with wedges of fig. For the life of me, I cannot identify the green chunks. Can anybody figure out what those are? Looks like avocado and okra, and I know it's not that. I love fig, and I love pomegranate. So let's do this. Oh yeah. Alright, so I do want to confirm that I smell both fig and pomegranate, but I smell a whole lot more. So let's start with the red fruit. Pomegranate, cranberry, goji berry. I would call this or classify this as jammy. And what I mean by that is that it is cooked down red fruit, condensed, concentrated. Think of red fruit turned into fruit leather, or for you kids of the 80s and the 90s, fruit roll-ups. Do they still make fruit roll-ups? Do the kids of the new millennia, are they familiar with fruit roll-ups or fruit by the foot? I don't know. It's very sweet, it's very tart, like what we would expect. Getting a little bit of this rose petal action. Yeah, we're definitely getting a little bit of floral play. What did they call it? Nutri-grain, fruit-filled bars, the fruit treats that came in the box. Nutri-grain bars, yeah. And why am I saying that? Again, the jammy, cooked down, fruit filling, slightly toasted. Some tangerine in here too. A little bit of ecto cooler. Very nostalgic, this candle. And a very, very ripe plum. Plum is essentially stone fruit, but I always include it with blue fruit, borderline black fruit. It's in the stone fruit family, but aromatically speaking, it smells more like blackberry, boysenberry, things of that nature. And speaking of black fruit, fig is black fruit, and I do smell fig, but it's not going to be this massive equivalent player like that pomegranate. And I've heard through the grapevine that fig is actually a very hard aroma, fragrance oil to create. In fact, there is no such thing as fig essential oil. It has to be fabricated synthetically. So I think in many cases when you smell fragrances that are called fig, they're just manipulated. They're taking different ingredients and trying to concoct an aroma that mimics the aroma in fig. And I think that's what's happening here. Because with that plum and with such fruits like blackcurrant or cassis, a little bit of blackberry, and even some golden delicious apple. And I said tangerine before. It's kind of giving us that sweet fig that they're promising on the label. And one of my favorite things is a fig-based balsamic vinegar. And if you have a fig and pomegranate balsamic vinegar, even better. You could put it on ice cream. It doesn't smell like vinegar, but that tartness puts it into that realm. There's definitely a green component here, just a little bit. And I wonder what that is supposed to be. You know, fig leaf is a very symbolic image in art, and what's really bringing that balsamic vinegar to life, remember I said the red delicious apples, is that we're getting something kind of like a candied nut, right? This is totally like a salad. I get the concept, at least I think I do. So in conclusion, I think very well executed, but if you're looking for a large fig dominated candle, this is not going to be the one, but that doesn't mean that you won't enjoy it. And if you're a wine lover, I think this would be a great candle to burn and pair with wine. Yes, this would pair beautifully with New World Bordeaux wine. What I mean by that is like South American or even Californian Bordeaux blends. Cabernet, Merlot, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot, Malbec, all blended together. You're gonna get all of those fruit profiles that we mentioned in this candle. That would be a lot of fun. Let's keep this rolling. We're doing really good here. So next one on the table here, this one hits close to home for me. Honeycrisp apple cider. Not Honey Crisp apple cider, Honeycrisp apple cider. On the label here, we can see what looks to be some form of whiskey apple cider based cocktail with a wedge of, I'm guessing, an Honeycrisp apple. Nostalgia City. Oh, massive apple. It's more fresh than it is like heavily oxidized or fermented apple cider. And to be fair, this totally does smell like a Honeycrisp apple. Even a Macintosh apple. Now, Macintosh apples grew around the orchards that I grew up in, so I'm very familiar with that smell. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you've ever had a Macintosh apple or smelled the skins specifically, they have a very fragrant, even floral smell, the skins, that is. You sliced an apple open, or you took a bite out of an apple, and then somebody called you, and you're talking on your phone for 20 minutes, and then you hang up, and you go back to your apple, and you pick it up, and you're like, ah, it's all brown and gross. Well, Next time that happens, don't throw your apple away. Pick it up and smell that brown part, that oxidized part of the apple. It smells amazing. That's oxidation, right? That's why apple juice is golden. That's why apple cider is brown. This smells like oxidation to me, but only minimal oxidation. You know what? Okay. Oh man, this is really bringing back memories. Very nostalgic. When we were kids, we'd walk around the apple orchards, and the way it works in apple orchards, and it's probably the same for most fruits, and it's the same thing with vineyards too. The folks who pick the fruit, if there's any damage to the fruit, what they do is they call it dropping the fruit. They pick it and they drop it on the ground because they can't use it if there's a big bruise or crack in the skin. But when you would walk through the orchards on those cool autumn days and the wind would just be tunneling through those rows of trees, it would pick up all of those aromatics off the orchard floor of those oxidized apples, those bruised, juicy apples off the ground. This smells like a bruised apple. And don't let that turn you off because it's a lovely smell. You know, I want to leave it at apple. Also picking up on some pear too. You know, your standard Bartlett pear. Bartlett, just like McIntosh, Bartlett has a little bit of that fragrant floral skin, but also a little bit of Asian pear too. Like I said, to be perfectly fair, honey crisp, authenticity all the way. I have the maid next door running the vacuum. And she just stopped. Let's hope she doesn't start again. We got one more candle to go. So last but not least, Sunset Fields. Now, I did purposely save this one for last because I think this one is probably the most vague. I mean, if you look at the label, we see a lot of sunflowers. I guess we would expect this to be floral, but who knows? So let's start with florals. Lavender being the most prominent here. We see yellow, we see sunflower, and lavender being lavender or purple. How it just throws us off course. Green notes. And there's some fruit notes here too. Citrus, again, citrus. Let's say blood orange. Most certainly peppercorn with perhaps other exotic spices. Again, those chai spices coming to mind. And you know, there's a sweetness here. There's a sweetness, but it's a neutral sweetness. So let's say like agave nectar. All right, so now I have to dig deeper and start making aggressive observations. I can't get shy in this moment. I really have to go at it. I'm picking up on gray amber or ambergris, if you've ever heard of this. It's a very, very popular ingredient used in the fragrance world. It's a substance found or produced, I should say, in the digestive system of a sperm whale. That is just a horrible sentence, and as nasty as that sounds, it's actually a very earthy, sweet smell. Going off that earthy / nutty, I want to throw in chestnut, which, if you've never smelled the chestnut, kind of smells like a raw sweet potato. And lastly, you know, we said woody, but cedar. I mean, that's just a given. I mean, you can't miss that. Trust me. As soon as I smelled it, a trigger went off, a memory. When I was a kid, my parents used to buy Dial Gold bar soap. Do they still make Dial Gold bar soap? I don't know. If they do make it, right here, it smells very similar to this. That ambergris or gray amber note, that cedar, the blood orange. But the other thing that reminds me of is Crisp Fall Night or Autumn Night by Yankee Candle. It's not going to be nearly as intense, more clean, and soapy. So there you go, folks. Well, I have a very special fragrance in my hand by Yankee Candle, brand new for 2017. In Europe, Moonbeams on Pumpkins is going to be one of several candles, fragrances released. Now, I have smelled this cold plenty of times, but I think I want to break out the aroma prison. All right, so here it is, folks. 5 grams of melted Moonbeams on Pumpkin. You see that? Let's open this up and give it a shot. A lot of anticipation surrounding this moment for me. I've smelled this cold. This is a much more explosive encounter. Pumpkin bread, pumpkin loaf, pumpkin muffin. That's the effect. Warm, baked pumpkin goods. We have all of the classic pumpkin spices. You know, the cinnamon stick, the freshly grated nutmeg, the ground ginger, and perhaps like peppercorn. But there's a significant nuttiness here, like roasted pecans, roasted chestnuts, and dried fruit too. There's dried fruit sometimes, right? In pumpkin bread? No, maybe? Like golden raisins, or adding to a little bit of that extra spiciness, like the dried orange zest. Rum raisin bread, yeah. There's a little bit of this booziness here, like a spiced rum. Captain Morgan. I think the number one adjective here is baked. Everything about this right now is just baked goods, down to even more of these fruit notes that I'm getting, like baked apple or spiced apple cider, which is kind of reminding me of like apple cider donuts or apple pie crust. And whereas Yankee Candle's sugared pumpkin swirl was spicy and sweet, this is going to be more spicy and savory, because we're getting loads of that salted, melted, clarified butter, sweetened with vanilla, heavy cream, or even like condensed milk. I can't help but think about that perfectly crusty, crumbly, crunchy muffin top. And check this one out, honey Teddy Grahams. Oh yeah, because we're definitely getting that sweetness too. And with that butteriness, with that like brown sugar sweetness, we're getting caramel, that crunchy caramelized creme brulee topping. You know, we said pumpkin spice, but what about like pumpkin puree? What about roasted pumpkin seeds? Well, I would say there's a little bit of this pumpkin puree in there. There's a definite pumpkin smell. But interestingly, this reminds me a little bit more of like pureed carrots, which gives this like a carrot cake, like a spiced carrot cake effect. So if I had to paint a portrait of this candle, imagine the Halloween season, the autumn season comes around, and you're walking by one of those hobby shops, whether it be Michael's or the Christmas tree shop, and the front door's open and you get that gust of the pumpkin spices, that definitive smell of autumn. But what I find interesting is that there is this lingering, what I would call oakiness in the background here. And what's special for me about that oakiness is that it brings us outside. It says, hey, let's go outside for a second. And again, it brings me back to walking through those piles of leaves, kicking up the dirt on the forest floor. And, you know, there's a fond place in my memory for the autumn and Halloween when you would go to the amusement parks, the haunted attractions, the haunted hay rides,
And while you were waiting in line in the cold, there'd be all of those concessions. Over there, they're selling the hot apple cider. Over here, the candy apples, the caramel apples. You got the buttered popcorn over there. This smells like a conglomeration of being at an amusement park with all of those concessions, all of those smells lingering around, working in beautiful, magical harmony. Meanwhile, you have those outdoor smells, that freshly fallen foliage, the dirt beneath your feet. This is like hanging outside on a cold autumn night, waiting to get on that spooky hayride. And speaking of night, the color of this wax, I love this choice, and the name I adore. Moonbeams on pumpkins. That word moonbeams really strikes a chord, at least in my imagination. With the color, the name, it creates this nocturnal concept. It brings us to the autumn night. Kind of how crisp fall night or autumn nights brought us to the evening. I close my eyes and I think about sitting outside with the leaves rustling, with that cool moonlight beaming on our face, and all of those pleasant smells of baked goods coming out from all of the kitchen windows of the neighborhood. Absolutely fantastic. If you can't tell already, I think this is an excellent execution by Yankee Candle. This is right down my alley. So here it is, Dazzling Red Maple, 5 grams, melted inside of this mason jar. So let's jump right into it. It's hot. So something I should mention is that I have smelled this tart cold. And I inadvertently saw Yankee Candle's fragrance notes for this scent, and I usually don't do that. But I think it's something that's important for me to say before we continue, is that this is not what I was expecting. And I would bet that for most of you, this is probably not what you would expect either. We have expectations when we hear a name like Dazzling Red Maple. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all, but I do think it's an important statement to make before we continue. So let us start with our baking spices. Not a pumpkin spice, not an apple pie spice, not like a chai spice, but we are getting a significant ground ginger, allspice, and cinnamon, and fruit. Now, I would expect golden delicious apples, apple cider, baked spiced pears, but that's not really what I'm finding at all. Surprisingly, this is big on lemon zest. Yes, that very clean, very powerful, dominant lemon zest. And blood orange. Blood orange is going to give us more of that spiciness, to add to that potpourri effect. And bergamot is in Yankee Candle's description, and I don't doubt that at all, because this also has a very bright citrus note as well. So herbal, yes, camphor rich, and sage. Now, you gotta be careful with sage because there's so many varieties of sage and they all smell, taste, and act differently. I can't even keep track. This isn't a savory sage. This is more of like clary sage or white sage, which is more earthy and woody. And it has like a honey-like sweetness. And with that citrus, that spicy orange, blood orange zest, those herbal notes, and that sweetness, this is really starting to take a tea direction. And what really adds to that effect is the power of the floral notes. Now, the florals are what I really noticed about this candle first. Notes of dried lavender, dried jasmine, and if you look at Yankee Candle's fragrance notes, you're going to see something neroli. Neroli is made from orange blossom, but different from orange blossom oil because of the extraction technique, you're going to be using steam distillation for neroli, whereas orange blossom oil is made by using solvents. And the effect is neroli always has that more pungent, powerful floral smell. Orange blossom, a little bit more on the fruity side. Neroli is found all of the time in bath and body products. And keep that in mind, we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. And there is weight to this candle. A thick, heavy aroma of cedar and amber and a very sharp musk. This isn't going to be your soft, powdery, floral white musk. This is going to be a little bit more of your aggressive musk. And not necessarily masculine, but still powerful. And that sharpness really does remind me a lot of the smell of insect repellent and almost the sensation of insect repellent, which, if you think about it, is actually not a bad thing at all. And let's throw some nostalgia in while we're at it. With that spice, with that sweetness, and I can't deny there's a little bit of this nuttiness in some form. Every now and then, I think for a moment that I'm smelling Honey Nut Cheerios. Buried somewhere deep in here is a box of Honey Nut Cheerios. I like it. So the overall effect to me is soap box. A wooden box soaked with the smell of floral, amber-rich, musky, soapy aroma. You know, if you've ever smelled Dial's Gold Bar Soap, you'll know what I mean. Or if you've ever come across a cologne or perfume with gold musk on the label, you might be familiar with this candle a little bit. A brand new autumn fragrance by Yankee Candle, a very mysterious fragrance, entitled Autumn Dusk. And before we jump into this candle, I would really just like to address quickly the label. Foreboding, a little bit more spooky. That setting, I mean, imagine if you were there alone at dusk in autumn. You were facing nothing but those silhouetted trees, bare trees, no leaves, and that veil of fog. What lies beyond that veil of fog? Only the bravest will venture to find out. But what does it smell like? Well, let's jump right into this candle and give it a sniff. There's something sincerely special happening inside of this jar. We could call this an aromatic illusion, if we'd like. We'll talk about that as we move forward during this evaluation. I do want to mention there's a side of this candle that takes a lot of liberties. We smell things that we literally wouldn't smell if we were here, in this setting. But there's another side to this candle that is incredibly, massively authentic. There is a legitimacy, there is an honesty, there is a sincerity to this candle that why would I want to deny it? Like Linus describing the Great Pumpkin. Nothing but sincerity as far as the eye can see. But like with most great illusions, it's all about deception. Again, we'll talk about this as we move forward. Cinnamon bark, nutmeg, allspice, cardamom, or in other words, apple pie spice, right? And I do want to mention clove, but what's interesting about clove, it's the only spice that Yankee Candle lists in their fragrance description of Autumn Dusk. But there's so many other dominant baking spices. So I don't understand why they would say clove. Or maybe I do. It's all about deception. We'll talk about it. Hold your horses. There's an element of cane sugar here, or just something sweet. And what that does is it smooths out all of those baking spices. It's about balance, right? If I handed you a glass of lemon juice and a little bit of water and I told you to drink it, you'd tell me to get out of town. However, if I added a couple ice cubes and maybe a couple spoonfuls of sugar, suddenly we have a delicious beverage on our hands. Again, balance. And that's what that sweetness is doing in this situation. Because you might smell this and say, oh, it's not a lot of spice. There's a lot of spice, but the intensity is being stifled by the sweet component in this candle. I can't deny that there's a little bit of nuttiness here and a little bit of creaminess. I'm gonna put them together and use buttered pecan ice cream as a descriptor. Why? Because you have a little bit of that savory, buttery saltiness with the vanilla ice cream and that toasted pecan aroma. That nuttiness really does add to the illusion of like acorns. And let's go with Earl Grey tea here. Yeah, like dried black tea. That really adds to the reality of, you know, the foliage on the forest floor. And Earl Grey tea is going to have the addition of bergamot oil. So what I'm saying is there's a little bit of citrus in here too. You know, I could even venture to say orange zest. Adds a little bit to that spiciness. So what is the illusion, the deception that I keep speaking of in this candle? Well, it's certainly going to be the combination of the wood notes. Even Yankee Candle says mysterious wood notes, but they also say smoky spice. What do you mean? Like toasted spice? Like on the frying pan, Maillard reaction, toasted spice? But I think that's a given. Because you wouldn't want to burn spice and smell the smoke of spice. Why would they choose a smoke? But they chose clove too, which was a weird choice, was it not? Because it's not the dominant spice. But when you implant these two words in our head, smokiness and clove, they're manipulating a thought. Clove cigarettes. At some point in our lives, we or someone we know has smoked clove cigarettes in front of us, and that's a smell you never forget. There's no smoke in here. But our minds take the bait because they've implanted that thought in our head. So there is this sweet, woody pine cone thing happening here, but the dominating wood note is going to be dry cedar, and I cannot overemphasize that word dry. This is the woodshed fully stocked with the split wood ready for the winter season. But there's another wood note happening here. Are you ready for this? Lumber. Yeah, straight up Home Depot. Have you ever walked into a brand new, recently built wooden shed before? And if that Home Depot comment turns you off a little bit, don't let it. Just call it sandalwood and call it a day. Why? Because it's the same thing. Tobacco. What is our association with tobacco? Come on, it's smoke, right? Think about being in like grandpa's car. You step on in, you just smell that cigar taint in the car. And it's actually not a bad smell at all. It's a very pretty, sweet smell. Or think about walking into that lounge or sitting room where someone's puffing away on that pipe with that beautiful aromatic tobacco. When we think about that sweet tobacco smell, and then we think about the clove, that baking spice, and the association we have with clove cigarettes. And then we talk about dried cedar, and our mind goes to fireplaces and campfires. Our mind is being bombarded with the idea of smoke. We want to smell smoke. Our brain tells us we smell smoke, but it's not there. That is the beauty, that is the illusion, that is the deception of this candle. I'm not suggesting this smells like vanilla bean. I'm suggesting vanillin. Vanillin is an organic compound. It's used all the time in the fragrance industry. It's an aldehyde, so it's used even in like vanilla flavoring. Think about how many times people have described Napa Valley Chardonnay to us as tasting buttery and oaky with notes of heavy vanilla. Well, there's actually a lot of truth to that. Chardonnay becomes buttery during the fermentation process and its contact with the expired yeast cells. And oaky, of course it tastes oaky. You're aging Chardonnay in oak barrels, it's going to taste oaky. But that vanilla, it's not coming from the fruit, and it's not coming from the fermentation process. It's coming from the vanillin compounds in the oak barrels, especially American oak. It has an abundance of vanilla in it. It's a little trip to the farm. I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to milk this. There's something in this candle that's mimicking the smell of hay, like fresh mown hay, bales of hay, hay mulch, whatever you want to call it. This smells like we're on a hay ride in late September traveling through an apple orchard. But there's more. There's always more. Dried corn husk or corn stalks. If you've grew up around cornfields, you know what I mean. Or if you decorate your house during the fall with corn stalks, or if you've been to a spooky corn maze around the Halloween season, you'll know what I mean. There is that corn husk aroma. That with the hay and the dried cedar, definitely creating this sense of place. I think this is a beautiful scent for Halloween or the month of November. How about we call this fragrance Scarecrow? That lone, grim, gaunt scarecrow perched high up in the cornfield with hay jetting out of his shirt and pants. I don't know, I love that concept. So Yankee, if you want to discuss, I got a couple more ideas for you. However, Autumn Dusk and this label, I'll take that any day of the week. Warm pineapple upside down cake. If you go on the website and you spend, I think it's $25 for an extra $10, they'll throw this in your order. On the label here, we have like some form of yellow cake. Oh, it's so light and fluffy. That is coated in frosting, a vanilla frosting with pecans lining the circumference of the cake. On top we have some form of compote or jelly, I'm guessing pineapple, with rings of pineapples, and in the center little maraschino cherry. So they're suggesting very sweet frosting, vanilla flavors, contrasted by toasted nutty pecan notes. I think that's a jelly compote, maybe an exaggerated form of pineapple. Then we have the fresh pineapple on top that would have been caramelized if it was baked. I don't know. I've never made an upside down cake before. You don't bake it with the pineapple? Yeah, I think the pineapple's put on last. You bake yours with the pineapples and cherries on the bottom, which becomes the top. I see. That makes sense. And then the maraschino cherries, adding more sweetness and a little bit more depth to the fruity notes of the candle. So let's give this a sniff. So does the pineapple get caramelized? Does it like brown up a little bit? Does it get like crispy, crunchy creme brulee? All right. So, okay, I'm always honest. Pineapple for sure, but let's put that off to the side for a second. The cherry is definitely coming through, but not a maraschino cherry. We are getting a really tart, like Bing cherry. Even though Bing cherries are super tart, they are sweet too. So it's just that the ratio to tart to sweetness, the tartness is up here, the sweetness is here. Some of you might take this the wrong way and don't. The syrup that you get in the fruit cups, the Dole tropical fruit cups, peel off the top, the syrup that is inside, there's that concentrated sugary smell for sure. A little bit of this banana peel thing happening, not much, and lemon, like lemon custard. Like this is not like strong clean lemon zest, nor is this like really tart lemon juice. This has a creaminess to it that brightens everything up. Usually you'll find that with the pineapple candles because pineapple fragrance oils won't really give you the tartness that you need. So you always have to add a little bit of that citrus in there. But pineapple, yes, there is pineapple, but it's a very specific kind of pineapple. So let's talk about two other pineapple candles by Yankee Candle. Pineapple Paradise, which to me is very much an authentic, freshly sliced pineapple aroma.
The Williamsburg flagship exclusive is called Williamsburg Pineapple. The difference between that one, pineapple soda. Yeah, there's this candy-esque, pineapple exaggerated aroma. Effervescence is carbonation. It's CO2 in a liquid, so you can't smell CO2, but there's a sensation. There's a sensation that you get when you smell effervescence. And that's what's happening here. This smells like I'm sticking my nose right on top of pineapple soda and those little bubbles and tickling my nose a little bit. Pineapple soda, but I'm getting more of that creaminess, like a cream soda meets pineapple soda. I was expecting more of like a buttercream, carbonation, whipped cream, Cool Whip kind of thing because of the cake. And I kind of want to say brown sugar now. All right, so the good news is, folks, very pretty, very sweet, very lovely, relaxing, refreshing smell. I can't imagine anybody. Well, maybe because some people hate pineapple. But I can't imagine really anybody, if you had this burning in your house and someone walked in, I don't think anybody would be like, put that out. I mean, I think it's just a very pleasant, very bubbly, very childish, very friendly, approachable fragrance. But this is going to be lower complexity, and low complexity is not a bad thing. This is just a good expression of a few notes. Is there 100 things going on? No. But does that mean if you have a wine and it's really good, but there's not a lot of complexity, does that make it a bad wine? No. Sometimes simplicity is not a bad thing at all. They have entitled this one White Sage. So what is white sage? And how is it different from every other variety of sage? It's a coastal herb, and it really loves warm, sunny, dry climates. That's where it's going to thrive. And it's probably most known for its medicinal properties, its medicinal uses. But my association with sage is in the kitchen. But I've never had white sage before. I don't really even know what it is. So there's only one way to find out. Let's break this open and give it a sniff. Are you ready? So this is certainly not that savory culinary experience, not even close. Surprisingly, what comes through first to me are the florals, warm climate florals. I'm gonna classify these as freesia, cherry blossom, and let's go with that white blossom musk. And I'm always saying white blossom musk, so I wanna show you this. This is Jovan White Musk. If you have a chance, go to your local perfume shop and check this out. White musk is essentially just a name for synthetic musk, because they used to get musk from glandular excretions from deers and things like that. We don't do that anymore. So instead, musk is usually derived from florals. And this is what I am smelling. It's a very pretty, floral, musky scent. And I'm trying not to be influenced by the color of this wax, but this is a very green candle. Green in that chlorophyll-rich way. Think of the leafy greens in our gardens, spinach or kale, or even cucumber. And not just like the meat of the cucumber, but the skin of the cucumber. You know, when you have the fresh cucumbers picked right out of the garden, you not only have the meat, but that green skin as well. Oh yeah. And this is adding a very refreshing side to this fragrance right here. Very refreshing. And speaking of cucumber, let's just throw in melon in general. Honeydew melon, because there's a little bit of this fruitiness in there. And something else I want to say is when you have the big wedge of watermelon in the summertime, and you're eating that watermelon and it's so good, you get down to the rind, the white part that you're not supposed to eat because mom says it's gonna get you sick, but you still eat it anyway. Right here, it has that melon quality, that melon-like refreshing aroma.
And there's so much more greenness happening here. Of course you get those fresh herbs from the garden. I'm actually picking up on a little dill here, but I'm also smelling a grassy field, wheatgrass, even this saturated moss, a very wet, fragrant moss. You get that classic clover aroma from Irish Spring. So this does have a clean side to it. A little bit masculine, if you ask me. But the other green thing that I'm smelling in here, I really want to address, that's gonna be aloe, right there. Barbasol aloe shaving cream. Like I said, masculine and very bath and body. If you smell this stuff, yeah, again, refreshing, green, springtime / summertime, very herbal smell, a little bit of citrus. In here I might be getting a little bit of lime. This right here smells a whole lot like what's going on inside of this candle. Now this one I need to mention, you're probably gonna think I'm nuts, but banana peel, absolutely. If you don't believe me, pick this up and smell it, or if you own it, go grab it and smell along with me. So I think you'll know what I mean. There's this definitive banana peel, green banana, even this savory fried plantain thing too. Very nice. And another warm climate fruit, tropical fruit, pineapple. A little bit of that Dole pineapple in here. Now, I'm certainly repeating myself a little bit here, but I think this is very important to mention. Clean and soapy. And what's adding to that is ambergris, or gray amber. It's a very popular ingredient in bar soaps. But I'll tell you what, my favorite thing that's happening inside of this jar is the aroma, the experience of a wooden deck, a brand new wooden deck or patio, that fresh lumber baking in the sun. We all have had that experience, and that is serving as a wonderful base note to this candle, White Sage. You see that? This cannot continue, folks. And this is going to include the brand new 2017 autumn collection called Fall in Love. This collection is going to consist of warm cashmere, autumn glow, vibrant saffron, and mulberry and fig. So we really can't do anything before we address this label right here. Would you take a look at that? This is what it's all about, folks. This is Yankee Candle at their finest, if you ask me. What we have is this golden, sun-kissed oak leaf laying on what seems to be purple leaves. But these purple leaves aren't really purple, are they? There's no purple oak leaves. These are leaves in the darkness of the shadows. Sunrise or sunset, dawn or dusk. Why? Because when that sun rises or lowers behind the horizon, we have that low-angled rays of the sun casting its light on those piles of leaves in everyone's yard. And what will happen is we'll get the light on, let's say, the top of the leaf pile, leaving all of the other leaves below in the shade, in the shadows, in the darkness. And I think that's what they're trying to say in this photograph. But what do you think? And let's talk about this name, Autumn Glow. Seems to fit perfectly. We almost read it and don't even think twice about it. But yet another candle that references the relationship of light, glow. We see dazzling, we see radiance, we see shimmering, shining, sparkling. All of these synonyms for light. And I get it, candles are a source of illumination. But we also too have to remember how we respond emotionally to these synonyms of light. So with the picture, with the name, Yankee Candle has completely set the stage. There's nothing left to do but to jump right in here and give this a sniff. Let's do it. I'm certainly not having any difficulties smelling this candle, that's for sure. Anything but subtle. For me, there's a confluence of two major forces at play. I think most people who smell this candle are going to mention two words: clean and masculine. Clean like walking down that laundry detergent aisle at our local market. Or that internal image that we all have of the classic country laundry room. You know, the windows swung open, the curtains blowing in the wind, maybe there's a wicker basket with freshly clipped flowers. Now we see that image on products, in ads, on billboards for things like detergents and fabric softeners all of the time. But what is the smell of clean air, crisp air, or freshly fallen rain? Well, the fragrance industry depicts this aroma 9 out of 10 times at least with a contrast of florals and citrus. So when I smell this, I'm thinking about powdered laundry detergent. Very intense, almost like a powdery musk. Or let's say mentholated or medicated body powder, like Gold Bond. We all know Gold Bond. We've watched the Price is Right, right? Gold Bond. It's all over my desk here. So now that I have Gold Bond floating in the air, I'm getting menthol, but I'm also getting eucalyptus too, which is totally a great point. It does also have that eucalyptus-like aroma. Makes us think that we're experiencing a cold environment. And what's cooler than an autumn morning or an autumn evening? I mean, I guess a winter evening or morning, but let's move on. It's a baby powder massacre. And as far as that citrus is concerned, I smell it. Lemon lime zest. And you know me, I like to reference nostalgic items. There's a little bit of a candy-esque side to this lemon and lime. We could almost say Trix breakfast cereal, lemon lime. Yeah. And vanilla. Vanilla is gonna soften everything up, add a little bit of creaminess. Raw almonds, whether you snack on raw almonds or you drink almond milk, you'll know what I mean. That vanilla and that raw almond give this a satin smooth creaminess to it. But what about those florals that I mentioned before? There is massive florals at play in here. I am going to classify them as dried lavender, lily of the valley, and honeysuckle. But here's the thing, all of the notes that I just mentioned are really just accents or embellishments of that masculine aspect that I was talking about before. And what I mean by masculine is really cologne. Old school, classic, sophisticated man. I mean, just think about what Cary Grant's closet would smell like. Or better yet, the interior of his car. The cigar smoke, the smell of the worn-in brown leather gloves, and of course, the lingering aroma of cologne. And as we all know, there are so many ingredients, so many complexities that go into making men's cologne. A lot of them being aldehydes, compounds, but one that came to mind was this one right here, Brut by Fabergé. The Essence of Man, classic scent. Yeah, well, it does not smell like Autumn Glow, but it's playing by the same rules. Lots of florals and very herbaceous, a lot of herbs as well. So here, as far as the herbaceous notes, I'm getting sage, basil, I'm smelling sassafras. But other things that I'm smelling that add to the cologne effect, that clean, soap-like amber, freshly sliced ginger, a little bit of this spicy clove, patchouli adding more to that herbal / earthy note, some of this spicy clove. I'm gonna say lavender again, that muskiness from the powdery element that we talked about before. A little bit of tobacco too. Birch. Birch is important. If you've ever smelled birch oil before, yes, of course, it's got a very woody, resinous smell, but it also has this wintergreen aroma and flavor if you've ever had a birch beer before. But whenever you find fragrances that have citrus, patchouli, amber, and tobacco, you usually find tonka bean. And if you look at Yankee Candle's fragrance notes, one of the base notes is going to be tonka bean. And if you ever have a chance to smell tonka bean isolated on its own, not mixed with anything else, it does have this dried hay smell to it, which adds to the reality of the freshly fallen foliage of the forest floor. Freshly fallen foliage of the forest floor. Freshly fallen foliage of the forest floor. Alliteration. If you are more compelled by the perfume and cologne-driven fragrances, this one for the season of autumn is probably going to work for you. Very powerful, intense smell, cold, autumn glow, high complexity, many layers of things happening here. Conceptually, this definitely works for me. I get it. I feel it. You know, I think this candle is going to speak to many people out there. It's not going to be for everybody, but you know, if you don't like it or if you do like it, I think we'll all agree that it's a really well crafted fragrance. And for that, I have to commend Yankee Candle. Autumn Glow. Beautiful, beautiful. So that's gonna do it for me today, folks. Thanks for joining me today. If you like this video, thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, right there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you folks real soon. But until then, be good.